2/3 of program manager candidates fail their interviews because they answer questions from the wrong perspective. And in this video, I'm going to share some insider secrets about answering 7 popular program manager interview questions. How do I know these secrets? I'm on the receiving side of the interview. I interviewed hundreds of project and program managers, and I know that this role demands a distinctive approach to demonstrating your practical skills. But before we dive into actual questions, I must address a critical mistake that impacts all your answers. As I said, I interviewed many program managers, and one pattern emerges consistently, because most candidates spend too much time talking about how they collected requirements or created schedules. They describe managing sprints, tracking tasks, and hitting deadlines. All of these are important skills, but completely irrelevant to program management roles. When you talk about deliverables and tasks in your answers, you immediately signal a project manager mindset, and your interviewer starts mentally downgrading your potential fit. Instead, discussing business outcomes and strategic alignment between teams demonstrates true project manager skills. This shift in perspective makes interviewers lean forward in their seats and listen carefully. Program managers operate at a strategic level, focusing on bigger picture, and interviewers are listening for this distinction in every word you say. They're evaluating whether you think at the right altitude for the role, from the right perspective. Successful candidates demonstrate 3 key mindset shifts in their answers. First, they talk about outcomes instead of tasks. Second, they empathize stakeholder influence rather than team management. Third, they focus on alignment rather than project plans. These shifts signal that you understand the true nature of program management. For example, consider these 2 answers. I managed a team of 10 developers who completed the project on time and within budget, versus I aligned 3 cross-functional teams to deliver a program that increased customer retention by 23%. You can see that the first shows you can run a project. The second shows you can deliver business transformation. The interviewer knows you can run projects based on your resume. What they are testing is whether you can connect multiple projects to a business goal, whether you can see the forest, not just the trees. That's why when you prepare your answers, always ask yourself, am I talking about managing work or delivering strategic outcomes? This check will immediately elevate your responses. In practice, you can transform your answers just by adding connection to broader business impact. After explaining, for example, what you did, link it to organizational outcomes using phrases like which contributed to or which enabled the organization to. Remember this simple rule. Project managers talk about completing work. Program managers talk about achieving outcomes. When other candidates describe how they manage tasks, you'll be explaining how you transform the business, the organization. That's the difference that gets you job offers. Now let's dive into the first question you'll face in almost every project manager interview. It's tell me about yourself. And this seemingly simple question trips so many candidates because they misunderstand its purpose. Again, if you are like most program managers, you probably have extensive project management experience. The natural tendency here is to walk through your entire work history or focus on technical skills you achieved there. This approach wastes a valuable opportunity to position yourself as a strategic program leader. Interviewers use this question to quickly evaluate if you have the program management mindset. They are assessing how you prioritize information and whether you understand what truly matters at the program level. And your answer needs to demonstrate strategic thinking from the very first sentence. Think of this as your elevator pitch, a 60 seconds movie trailer for your career. The perfect answer follows a clear structure featuring just 3 specific experiences that highlight 3 key program management areas. In your answer, focus on programs or complex projects you managed that required cross-functional collaboration, stakeholder engagement at various levels, and strategic risk management. Then for each experience, explain what you did and why it mattered for the organization. The rule of thumb here, just select examples that demonstrate your ability to align multiple projects and work streams towards a business goal, business objectives. Also, you must mention some numbers, use specific metrics that executives care about. For example, state that you reduced operational costs by 18%, or automated process that reduced manual labor by 99%. This is important because program managers always work against business KPIs. I also noticed that many candidates mention technical skills or certifications. And while they might be relevant, these don't demonstrate senior level leadership that you will be paid for. Instead, you can briefly mention how you have applied those skills to drive business transformation. For example, say something like, I introduced best practices of requirements management across 5 Scrum teams, which improved quality by 37%. Next, you must time yourself when practicing. If you can't deliver in under 2 or 3 minutes, you are including too much detail. Program managers must communicate efficiently. Going longer signals you can't prioritize information, and it's a major red flag for interviewers. Also, always include a brief statement about handling complexity and ambiguity. These are like real keywords you must spell out and support with your experience. And I always teach to finish with a compelling call to action like, would you like me to dive deeper into any of these examples? Because this creates curiosity and opens the door for deeper conversations. And remember, this question isn't about your history or experience. It's all about communicating that you understand the nature of this role. So practice until it flows naturally and conveys confidence in your ability to operate at a program level. The question, walk me through a successful program you managed end-to-end, is where many candidates again immediately reveal they're still thinking like project managers. When I ask this in interviews, I typically hear responses focused on timelines, resource allocation, and project plans. And this approach misses the entire point of program management. When answering this question, remember that program success is measured by business transformation or gaining specific benefits. That's why structure your answer around the program lifecycle, while tying it back to these organizational goals and impact that you made. Always start by explaining the business challenge that made a program approach necessary. For example, you can state something like this. Our company was losing market share because our customer onboarding experience spanned 3 different systems managed by separate teams. A single project couldn't solve this, we needed a coordinated program to transform entire customer journey. This opening signals that you understand when program management is needed. So think of program management like a conductor of an orchestra, where each section plays its own part, but the conductor ensures they create this harmonious music together. Next, explain how you structured the program strategically. For example, I structured the program around three interconnected work streams: software development, process redesign, and change management. Each had its own project manager, and together we identified requirements that contributed to our goal of reducing customer onboarding time by 60%. After that, you should explain how you secured executive-level support for the program. For example, I personally met with our Chief Revenue Officer weekly to review program metrics tied to her quarterly goals. This maintained executive visibility and helped me quickly remove obstacles. Again, this demonstrates your ability to work on leadership level. And after that, you can continue with how you measured business impact. For example, we established three critical performance indicators: customer conversion rate, time to first transaction, and support ticket volume. All these help to improve customer onboarding time. Also, I recommend that you consider adding a specific trade-off story that is very typical for program managers. So, for example, 2 months in, our security team identified compliance issues affecting all work streams. I assess the business impact of additional requirements and choose to continue development while the security team developed mitigation plans in parallel. Next, it's a good idea to highlight stakeholder management. For example, I used a stakeholder register to identify 27 key leaders from 6 departments and documenting their interests, concerns, and communication preferences. For example, this helped address resistance from the financial team, who had specific conversion tracking requirements that everyone ignored. And you should always end with concrete outcomes, the business objective outcomes. In this example, this program reduced onboarding time from 14 days to 3, increased conversion by 32%, and enabled us to enter the enterprise market, growing revenue by $5.7 million in the first year. And again, throughout your whole answer, don't forget to include actions you personally took, because interviewer is testing your real hands-on program management experience. They want to see that you can get your hands dirty if necessary. Now, if you find these insights useful so far, please click the like button below, because it will help me reach more project managers and program managers just like you. Thank you. Next, we have a tricky question. Tell me about a program you were involved in that was failing to deliver expected results and how you overcame the challenges. And this separates true project managers. This question reveals whether you can diagnose and fix systematic issues, not just technical problems. In my experience, most candidates immediately jump to describe how they added more resources, extended deadlines, or even adjusted the scope. And these answers signal ad hoc thinking. Program recovery usually requires addressing some strategic, systematic root causes, and candidates often focus on technical fixes without addressing the fundamental program issues. That's why, when answering this question, start by explaining how you identified the program was truly failing. For example, after joining a digital transformation program 6 months in, I noticed that while 2 projects were reporting green status, adoption metrics weren't improving. People were just not using the new software. This mismatch between project deliverables and business outcomes signaled deeper program issues. Then, describe your assessment approach. I examined the alignment between business objectives and the project goals, and I discovered that 3 projects were not collecting feedback from people using the new software. They were only focused on delivering new functionality. Next, it's great to include a story on how you managed other managers. I worked with managers of all projects. I explained the need to address the pain points of real users to increase adoption. We discussed possible approaches to collect and prioritize feedback from end users and track their satisfaction. Then I delegated the selected solution to one of the project managers. After that, you want to include a section on how you engaged executives. For example, I met with the CEO and presented both the current state, the problem, and free recovery options with different approaches to continue the program. We agreed to enhance the training phase to address the need of faster adoption. You might also want to share some examples of rebuilding stakeholder trust. For example, in this case, I started weekly transparent communications that acknowledged both problems and progress. I created a simple dashboard showing departments' adoption of the new software. As always, you must end with concrete business outcomes of the program. For example, 6 months after implementing our recovery plan, we launched our platform with critical updates aligned with users' needs. While we delivered 3 months later than planned, we ensured 100% adoption across all departments. Remember that this question tests your ability to fix systematic problems, which usually requires some unique approaches, and that's the core project management skill that goes beyond project execution skills. Next, when interviewers ask how do you handle disagreements or confrontations between teams in the program, they are testing another critical project management skills. It's your ability to resolve conflicts without direct authority. The fundamental difference here is influence versus control, because while project managers often rely on direct control over team members, program managers must navigate conflicts like these skilled mediators between other leaders, and they need to balance multiple interests on a delicate seesaw, fostering cooperation without actually forcing any solutions. As always, understanding the root cause of team disagreements is essential. You start with diagnosing conflicts, and it's like mapping uncharted territory, because you must identify whether teams face competing priorities, misaligned objectives, or resources constraints, or different interpretations of requirements. And you need to know all of this before plotting a resolution path. Your approach should almost always focus on creating a shared understanding of the program's objectives. So, for example, when the UX and front-end teams started to strongly disagree about implementing the app's main dashboard, I brought both teams together to review the program's objectives. And seeing who and how will use our app in the future help them to look beyond individual projects' concerns. Then usually it's a great idea to demonstrate more tactical, more specific examples of resolution process with things that you actually did. So I facilitated a structured workshop where each team presented their concerns in terms of business impact. I remained neutral here, asking questions that revealed underlying business trade-offs. Here's one critical pro tip for you. Data-driven decisions usually transform emotional disputes into objective discussions. And you can check if you have examples in your experience like that. For example, in this one. Also, we reviewed analytics from the old application and listed the top functionalities that people actually used. Then we mapped those against business goals. This quickly shifted the discussion from competing approaches to business goal alignment. Always remember that talking on meetings is not enough, because proper workflows create transparency. After reaching an agreement, I ensured that corresponding teams adjusted the requirements in Jira. I asked the project managers to double check if there was any impact. But your story should not end here, because resolution also requires follow-up to check that agreements are staying in place. In this case, first of all, I dedicated time to participate in all upcoming demo meetings with Scrum teams. Then I also scheduled check-ins 2 weeks after to ensure that teams continue to collaborate in good spirit. By the way, here's an additional thing you may consider adding to your story, and it's about escalation. See if this applies to you. I see this role as a senior level leadership one, so I escalate the issue only when the program is at real risk that I have no control over. But in any case, I would first analyze the issue, identify the impact, and proactively prepare alternative plans before escalation to leadership. Okay, as you can see, this question reveals whether you can influence without authority or whether you rely on your positional power. Because your answer must show how you bring alignment through leadership rather than direct influence on specific projects. Alright, when interviewers ask about engaging with C-suite stakeholders, they are testing a critical skill that many project managers never develop. This question reveals whether you can operate at executive level, which is fundamental for program management success. I have watched even good candidates fumble this question by focusing on the wrong aspects of the program. And the biggest mistake candidates make here is treating executive communication like a progress report but with fancier words. C-suite interaction requires a deeper understanding of what executives care about, because executives need to know how your work impacts business priorities, not the implementation details themselves. Engaging with executives is like playing a game of chess. You must think several moves ahead, you must anticipate their concerns, and you must have a strategy for communication. That's why, first of all, I research their specific priorities and communication preferences before any interaction. For example, does the CFO need to know which user stories we finished this week? Does the CTO want to get early warning about technical risks? The idea is to always tailor your communication to the needs of the executives. You must provide only the information required for them to make correct decisions. For example, instead of saying, "We completed the current sprint, finishing all user stories that we planned," you should say something like, "We are on track to launch in Q3. But there is one critical decision we need to make today on the features priorities." So here's how an actual answer may sound like and what you should focus on. Once I managed a digital transformation program, I discovered we couldn't deliver all mobile features in the promised timeline. I analyzed 3 options with different business impacts: delay all features, deliver features in a series of releases, or reduce the scope. I presented these to the Chief Product Officer with clear business trade-offs, helping him to make informed decisions aligned with the company's priorities. The CPO appreciated this approach and selected the deliver features in a series of releases option, which allows other initiatives to proceed as planned. Here's another critical idea. Maintaining this executive support throughout the whole program is essential, and in most cases you will have regular progress report meetings. But again, these meetings are for building engagement and making decisions. They are not about progress on user stories. On top of that, there is another side of this C-suite communication that lots of candidates forget about, or actually have never experienced it in the first place. Because, you see, you must display your ability to translate executive directions into actionable guidelines and plans for the team. For example, when the VP of Sales emphasized the need for improved customer satisfaction, for example, I collaborated with customer support, product, and engineering teams to define specific measurable indicators like Net Promoter Score, customer churn rate, and average resolution time. Knowing these factors, we then established a cross-functional initiative, the program, to analyze customer feedback, identify key pain points, and prioritize product features and process improvements aimed at directly impacting those metrics. Do notice that this question tests if executives can trust you to represent the program at the highest levels, a core responsibility that separates strategic leaders from just tactical project managers. Next, interviewers can ask you a nasty question. How do you ensure effective communication across teams? And they are testing your ability to create communication systems that work with cross-functional teams and stakeholders. Most candidates immediately start talking about specific tools like Slack or Jira, or they mention these standard meetings like daily stand-ups. And if you follow the theme, this is not something you should focus on. Program-level communication focuses on creating shared understanding across diverse groups with different needs and priorities. For example, your answer may sound something like this. When I approach communication across a program, I first assess the different information needs of each stakeholder group. Executives need business impact updates and risk assessments. Project teams need technical details and dependencies. External partners need timeline commitments and integration points, sometimes requirements. Recognizing these different needs is the foundation of effective program communication. Next, I establish communication principles that apply across all projects in the program. For digital transformation program I mentioned before, I created a standard status reporting that allowed me to roll up to executive level report and connect the work with strategic goals and milestones. This reporting framework saved hundreds of hours for project managers and me, and almost completely eliminated the need to collect project data manually. Data collection was automated in Jira, and I can easily generate reports for different stakeholder groups. Balancing transparency with tailored messaging is crucial. In this program, I created different reporting levels: technical dashboards for project teams, dependency-focused views for project managers, and outcome-focused executive dashboards. Altogether, this worked like a transportation network, ensuring information reached the right destination in the appropriate form. Also, creating a common language across projects is essential. And in the beginning, teams use different definitions of complete or definitions of done, causing significant confusion. I established a shared set of definitions and metrics, ensuring everyone understood program status consistently. In practice, I leverage both formal communication, like status reports, governance meetings, and informal channels, coffee chats, team visits, just to build a complete picture of program health. Because informal channels often reveal problems before they appear in formal reporting. Here's a critical mindset shift you must make in your head to be effective and efficient as a program manager. Because program communication is all about creating an informational architecture that enables better decision-making at all levels. When teams have the right information at the right time in the right format, they can align their work to program objectives without constant intervention from you as the program manager. By now, you should see the pattern. Program manager interview questions test your ability to think on a higher level, influence without authority, and deliver strategic outcomes. But here's the counterintuitive thing most people don't understand. You don't need some specific program management skills because it's mostly about project management. But you need to understand project management on a much deeper level so that you can apply the same principles and concepts on a higher level. That's why I recommend that you check the resources in the description for this video and consider systemizing your knowledge with my project management mastery course. Or you can watch this video next. Click the video now because I'm waiting for you there and I would like to share with you an example of program management in the real world.